The blood moon hung heavy over the clearing, its crimson glow spilling like fire over the pack grounds. Shadows danced across stone pillars, and torchlight shimmered against steel eyes and gleaming fangs. The entire pack had gathered, waiting for their alpha to make his judgment, and she stood at the center of it all. Her heart pounded like a war drum in her chest. She had dreamed of this night, dreamed it would be the moment their bond was declared, their union blessed by the moon goddess herself. Yet now, as the crowd's whispers swirled around her, dread clawed at her ribs, he was there tall, broad, shouldered with midnight hair catching the light of the moon, the alpha, her mate, her destined other half. His silver eyes were cold, colder than the steel of a blade. When he spoke, his voice carried like thunder through the night. I reject you. The words cut sharper than claws. Gasps broke from the pack. A ripple of shock and cruel fascination moved through the wolves, and she felt their eyes burning into her skin. The bond between them pulled at her chest, but it was fraying, shredding under the force of his rejection. No, her whisper was raw, trembling. You can't. He stepped closer, gaze like ice. You are not fit to be my Luna. The moon goddess may have tied us, but I will not claim you. It was a death sentence spoken in front of her people. Her pride shattered, and so did her heart. The pack began to murmur, some sneering, some pitying. Heat burned in her throat, but she lifted her chin even as her soul cracked apart. If she broke here, they would devour her. She would give them no satisfaction. The alpha turned his back on her as if she were nothing. That hurt more than the rejection itself. The finality in the way he dismissed her. Her chest ached so violently, she thought she might collapse. But she forced her legs to move one step, then another, pushing through the crowd of wolves who stared and whispered. Their jeers clung to her skin, but she did not let them see her tears. She did not know where her feet carried her, only that she had to escape. The night air outside the circle was sharp and cold. She ran into the forest, her lungs burning, her heart bleeding. The blood moon followed her, painting the trees in crimson. Behind her, the pack's laughter and whispers faded into the distance, but the echo of his words lingered. I reject you. She stumbled to her knees beneath the trees, the weight of it crushing her. Her body shook with sobs, but no one was there to hear. No one was there to care, and yet deep within her something stirred. A spark of warmth in the midst of all her ruin. A life, small and fragile, already beginning to grow inside her womb. Unseen, unknown, the alpha's heir. Her chest still burned from the rejection, though the night air bit cold against her skin. The forest had given her a brief sanctuary, but dawn forced her back toward the pack house. She had nowhere else to go, and the wolves never forgot weakness. The clearing was alive with whispers when she returned. The blood moon had passed, yet its echo clung to every sneer, every pair of eyes that followed her steps. There she is. A she-wolf murmured, voice dripping with cruel delight. Rejected. Imagine the shame. Their words stung, but she kept her chin high. She would not bend. At the top of the steps, the alpha stood. Broad, untouchable, silver gaze fixed on her like a blade. He hadn't slept. She could see it in the hard lines of his jaw, in the faint tension around his shoulders. Yet he wore indifference like armor. You shouldn't have come back, he said, his voice calm but sharp. Her throat tightened. This is my home. It was, he corrected, each syllable precise. But you are no longer my mate. The pack will not follow a Luna who has no place at my side. The crowd hushed, every ear straining. Her pulse thundered. If she pleaded, she'd be weak. If she defied him, she'd be ruined, so she chose silence. Her defiance only deepened his frown. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. Do you understand, little wolf? You are nothing to me now, nothing. The words struck like claws across her soul, tearing what was left of her pride. Still, she refused to let him see her bleed. She turned from him, her gaze sweeping the gathered wolves who waited for her collapse. Instead, she straightened her shoulders. If I am nothing to him, then I will be something to myself. The murmurs turned restless, some mocking, some uncertain. The alpha's eyes darkened, but he said nothing. He had made his rejection clear. That night, as the pack dispersed, she lay awake on the edge of the territory, every nerve frayed. His face haunted her, those cold silver eyes, the way his voice had shredded her heart. The mate bond still tugged at her, refusing to sever, but she knew one truth: if she stayed, they would crush her. If she left, she might survive, but survival came with a price. She would have to bury her love, her dreams, and the fragile hope she had once carried for a future with him. The moonlight slipped across her skin, silver and cruel. She curled into herself, whispering into the night, "You may reject me, Alpha, but I will not break." And yet, beneath her vow of strength, a trembling fear stirred, because deep in her bones, she already knew she carried something more than shame inside her, something that tied her to him, no matter how far she tried to run. The forest was her refuge now, its shadows thick and merciful, hiding the shame that clung to her like a second skin. Days had passed since the rejection, but the pain had not dulled. It lived in her chest, a constant ache, sharp as broken glass. She had thought her life ended the moment he cast her aside, yet a cruel twist of fate whispered otherwise. The sickness came first, waves of nausea at dawn, weakness she could not shake. At first she blamed grief, the endless nights of tears she never let anyone see. But then her hands lingered against her belly, and fear slithered through her veins. No, it couldn't be. Alone in the abandoned cabin she had found on the edge of the woods, she lit a single candle. The flame wavered as she pressed trembling fingers against her stomach. Her wolf stirred, restless, protective, and in that stirring she felt it life, small, fragile, new, her breath caught, the Alpha's child. Her heart hammered as the truth crashed down upon her. If he knew, if the pack discovered. She saw the images flash in her mind, the child taken, raised as his alone, or worse, discarded as a stain of weakness. No, she whispered into the dark, clutching her belly as if she could shield it from the world. No one can ever know. The decision was forged then and there, carved from her fear and her desperate love. She would protect this life with everything she had, even if it meant lying, hiding, becoming a ghost in the shadows. A knock startled her, a hunter passing through, perhaps. She blew out the candle, clutching her cloak around her shoulders. Heart pounding, she listened as footsteps crunched outside before fading away. The silence returned, heavy but welcome. She sank to the floor, her body trembling. She should have felt only terror, but beneath the fear was something else, something fierce, hope. This child, born of rejection, was hers. Her strength, her reason to keep breathing when everything else had been stripped away. "I'll keep you safe," she vowed softly, her voice steady despite the tears sliding down her cheeks. "Even if I have to leave everything behind, even if I have to face the world alone." The cabin creaked in the night wind, but she did not waver. A secret now grew within her, a secret that bound her to the Alpha in ways he could never undo. And though she tried to push the thought aside, a chilling question lingered in her mind. How long before fate forced their paths to cross again? The pack house loomed against the horizon, its stone walls gleaming pale beneath the fading moonlight. Inside, silence clung to the halls like a curse. The Alpha sat alone at the long table, shoulders tense, hands clenched around a cup he hadn't touched. He should have felt relief. He had done what was expected of him, rejected the bond that tied him to a woman deemed unworthy. It was the only choice for an Alpha who carried the weight of a pack on his shoulders, and yet, her scent lingered. He shut his eyes, inhaling deeply, but it was still there. That soft, maddening pull, the echo of a bond that refused to be severed no matter how firmly he spoke the words. Alpha, his beta, entered quietly, bowing his head. "The wolves are restless. Some question why the goddess tied you to her at all. Let them question." His voice was sharp, colder than steel. "I gave my decision. It is final." The beta hesitated, then lowered his gaze. "Still, some think you will call her back." A muscle twitched in the Alpha's jaw. Call her back. The very thought scraped against his pride, his sense of duty. He couldn't, he wouldn't. She had been too soft, too quiet, a Luna who would bend instead of lead. That was what he told himself, what he had to believe, and yet, when he closed his eyes, he saw her face, her defiance as she had lifted her chin despite the humiliation, the pain in her voice when she whispered, "You can't." He slammed the cup onto the table, shattering the fragile silence. Enough. But it wasn't enough, not for him. Far from the pack house in the woods he once ruled with iron command, he felt her presence like a ghost, fading but not gone. His wolf stirred uneasily inside him, restless with the bond they had denied. He rose, pacing the length of the hall, every step echoing with frustration. He had rejected her. It should have been over. So why did it feel as though part of him had been ripped away, leaving only a hollow ache? He told himself it didn't matter, that she would vanish, that she would not survive long beyond the borders. The world was cruel to wolves without packs. Still, the thought unsettled him more than he cared to admit. He pressed a hand to the table, silver eyes glinting beneath the torchlight. "Why do you still haunt me?" he whispered, though no one could hear. And outside, the night offered no answer, only silence, and the faint, lingering scent of the mate he had cast aside. The days bled into weeks, and still she hid. The cabin at the forest's edge had become her world. Its wooden walls were old, its roof cracked, but it kept out the wind and offered her the solitude she needed. She kept to herself, venturing out only at night to gather berries or fetch water from the stream, always careful to leave no trace. Her belly had begun to swell, a secret that grew with every passing moon. At first, the changes terrified her, but slowly, as the flutter of tiny movements stirred inside her, fear began to mingle with something else, wonder. She would press her palm against her stomach and whisper softly, "You are mine. They cannot take you from me." The forest seemed to listen. The trees swayed as if in agreement, and the moonlight that spilled through the cracks in the roof painted her in silver, as though the goddess herself bore witness. Yet danger lurked closer with each passing night. The pack still patrolled the borders. She had caught glimpses of them once or twice, silver eyes scanning the trees. Each time, she crouched low, heart hammering, holding her breath until their footsteps faded. If they found her, everything would be over. One evening, as the wind howled through the branches, she sat by the fire and let herself dream. She imagined a small boy with his father's sharp jaw and her eyes, running barefoot through the grass, laughing freely. Or a girl, strong and unyielding, who would never bow her head for anyone. The images filled her chest with warmth, softening the sharp edges of her sorrow. But always, when she thought too long, his face returned, the alpha. The father her child would never know. His silver eyes haunted her dreams even when she begged her heart to forget. Tears burned her lashes, but she brushed them away quickly. "No," she whispered fiercely. "I cannot let you break me again." The fire popped, scattering sparks into the shadows. She drew her cloak tighter, steadying her breath. The child was her anchor now, her reason to keep going. Whatever it took, she would protect this life, even if it meant severing every tie she once had to him. But deep down beneath her resolve, a truth she could not silence lingered like an echo. Their bond was not gone. No matter how she tried to cut it away, it pulsed faintly still, a thread that connected her heart to his. And as the child grew, so did that invisible thread, an unspoken promise that fate was not finished with them yet. The night she left was moonless, the sky swallowed by thick clouds. It felt like a sign, the goddess herself veiling her as she slipped from the forest's edge and crossed into forbidden land. Her heart thundered with each step, her cloak pulled tight around her shoulders. Her belly, though still small, weighed heavy in her awareness. She could not risk being caught now. Behind her, faint howls echoed, the pack's voices rolling like thunder through the hills. She froze, her pulse quickening. They weren't hunting her, not yet, but the sound reminded her of the danger that would follow if they discovered her absence. Every instinct screamed to run. Branches whipped at her arms as she pushed deeper into the wilderness. The ground was uneven, treacherous, but she did not stop. She could not. Her wolf prowled within, guiding her steps, urging her to keep moving. Survival meant silence. Survival meant distance. By dawn, her legs trembled with exhaustion. She found shelter beneath a rocky outcrop, curling against the cold stone. Her breath came in shallow bursts, and tears she had sworn she wouldn't shed slid unbidden down her cheeks. She thought of him, the alpha. Would he notice she was gone? Would he even care? Or would he breathe easier knowing she was no longer a shadow on his pride? Her throat tightened, but she pushed the thought away. She had to focus on what mattered, the child inside her. The hours crawled, every sound in the forest sharpening her senses. Once, a pair of eyes gleamed in the brush, low and predatory. She bared her teeth in warning, her wolf rising to the surface. The beast slunk away, leaving her trembling but unbroken. When darkness fell again, she moved once more, past rivers that bit with icy water, across thorned fields that tore at her skin. Each mile carved into her body, but with each mile, the bond of the pack weakened. She could feel it, their presence fading like smoke on the wind, and with that fading came both terror and freedom. At last, after what felt like endless nights, the scent of unfamiliar soil and smoke reached her senses. A village, human, small, and distant from the territory she once knew. She collapsed at its edge, her body aching, her spirit torn raw. But as she pressed her palm to her stomach and felt the faint stirring within, determination sparked in her chest once more. She would survive, she had to. The alpha had cast her aside. The pack had turned their backs, but she carried with her something they could never take. His child, her child, and she would fight the world itself to keep that secret safe. The storm broke the night her child came into the world. Rain hammered against the roof of the small hut she had found at the village's edge, abandoned, half collapsed, but enough to shield her from the elements. Lightning split the sky, thunder rattled the walls, and inside she knelt alone, clutching her swollen belly as waves of pain tore through her. Her wolf prowled beneath her skin, restless, urging her to endure. But the agony made her cry out, her voice muffled by the howl of the storm. No midwife, no family, no alpha to hold her hand, only her strength, only her will, hours stretched, each contraction pulling her closer to the brink. She whispered through gritted teeth, "Hold on, little one, just a little longer." Sweat poured down her temples, her hair plastered to her skin, her body trembling with exhaustion. Finally, with one last cry that echoed like a prayer, the silence broke. A tiny wail filled the air. Her child, her miracle, had arrived. Tears streamed freely now as she pulled the small, wriggling form against her chest. A boy. His cry was fierce despite his fragile body, his tiny fists curling as if ready to fight the world. She wrapped him in the only cloth she had, cradling him close. He was warm, he was real, and he was hers. Her heart cracked open with a love so sharp it hurt. She pressed her lips to his damp forehead and whispered, "You are my everything. No one will ever take you from me." But as she looked down at him, her breath caught. In the flicker of lightning, she saw it. The unmistakable glint of silver in his eyes, the alpha's eyes. Her hands shook as she held him closer. It was a secret she could never let anyone see. A mark that tied him forever to the man who had rejected her, to the pack that would tear him away if they knew. Outside, the storm raged on, but within the fragile walls, she felt a strange stillness settle. She was no longer just a broken mate or a banished wolf. She was a mother, and that made her stronger than she had ever been. The boy quieted, his small chest rising and falling against hers. She listened to the rhythm of his breaths, steady and certain, and for the first time in months she allowed herself to smile. She had given life in silence, hidden from the world, but silence could not last forever. For one day, someone would see those silver eyes, and when that day came, her secret would shatter. The village was small, tucked deep into the valley where the mountains pressed close and the forest spread wide. It was a place where time seemed to move slower, where faces were familiar, and strangers rarely crossed the borders. For 5 years, she had made it her home. Her little boy darted between the cottages, laughter spilling into the air as he chased after a wooden toy. His legs were strong now, his hair dark and unruly like hers, but his eyes, those silver eyes, could never be disguised. She kept him close to the shadows, always urging him not to draw too much attention, but he was a child, wild, fearless, full of energy that refused to be contained. "Careful, Elias," she called, her voice carrying a note of warning masked in warmth. The boy turned to her with a grin that stole her breath every time. He was growing fast, too fast. Already she could see the strength in his stance. the spark of something otherworldly in the way he moved. Sometimes, when the moon was high, she caught him staring at the night sky as if it called to him. She feared that call. The villagers were kind enough, though whispers followed her. A woman without a husband. A boy with a gaze too piercing, too unnatural. Most dismissed it as curiosity, but every now and then she noticed wary glances, the kind that lingered too long, the kind that made her stomach knot. Still, there were moments of peace. Sitting by the fire as Elias curled against her side, watching him sleep, his breath steady, his small hand gripping hers. In those quiet hours, she almost believed they could remain hidden forever, but peace never lasted. Rumors began to drift through the marketplace, whispers of a woman who lived at the edge of the village, raising a boy with eyes like a wolf under moonlight. Her blood ran cold when she overheard them. She clutched Elias tighter that night, rocking him until he fell asleep. Her heart pounded with dread. If the wrong ears caught those whispers, if word spread beyond the valley, it was only a matter of time before the past came crashing back. Elias stirred in his sleep, pressing closer to her chest. She bent her head and kissed his hair, whispering fiercely, "No one will take you from me, not now, not ever." Yet in the silence that followed, her wolf stirred uneasily. Because deep down, she knew the truth. The alpha's blood burned in her son's veins, and blood always called to blood. The morning was crisp, the air laced with pine and the smoke of traveling merchants' wagons. She tugged Elias's hood over his unruly hair, pulling it low to shadow his eyes. "Stay close to me," she whispered, her tone firmer than usual. They had come into the nearest town for supplies, flour, cloth, a bit of medicine. It was supposed to be quick, in and out, no eyes lingering too long. But the marketplace was crowded, pulsing with strangers and scents she hadn't encountered in years. Elias's small hand slipped into hers, warm and trusting. He was humming under his breath, too innocent to sense the danger that lived in every heartbeat of her chest. And then she froze, the air shifted, a scent threaded through the market, sharp and intoxicating, clawing at her senses like a memory she had tried to bury. Cedars, smoke, moonlight. Her wolf shuddered, recognizing it instantly. Her gaze snapped across the crowd, and her heart nearly stopped. He was there, tall, commanding, moving with the authority of a man who belonged everywhere he walked. The alpha, his dark hair caught the sunlight, and his silver eyes cut through the throng of people as if searching for something. Or someone. She couldn't breathe. 5 years. 5 years she had hidden from him, convinced the world was vast enough to keep them apart. Yet here he was, his presence like a storm colliding with her carefully built peace. Elias tugged at her sleeve. "Mama, why are we stopping?" Her throat tightened. She turned, crouching quickly to adjust the boy's cloak, desperate to shield his face. "Stay quiet, sweetheart. Don't let go of my hand." But fate was cruel. Across the stalls, the alpha's gaze landed on them. For the briefest moment, his steps faltered. His nostrils flared, as though scent had betrayed her hiding place. Recognition flickered, not full, not yet, but enough. She yanked Elias against her side and wove through the crowd, heart pounding, every instinct screaming to run. She dared not glance back, but the heavy weight of his stare pressed between her shoulder blades, unyielding, inescapable. And though she slipped through the maze of stalls, though she vanished down narrow alleys with Elias's small footsteps echoing beside hers, she knew he had seen her, he had felt her, and she would never be invisible again. The alpha had not been able to shake it, that fleeting moment in the market, her face half, hidden beneath a worn hood, her eyes wide with fear, burned into his memory like fire. He had thought her gone forever, vanished into the shadows of his rejection. Yet there she was, alive, breathing, running from him, and the boy. He replayed the image again and again in his mind. A small hand clutching hers, silver eyes glinting beneath the hood, too bright, too familiar. His wolf growled restlessly. "Yours." He clenched his fists as he paced the inn that night, every muscle taut. Logic tried to argue. Plenty of children had unusual eyes. Plenty carried strength in their step. But instinct never lied. The boy carried his blood. He could feel it in the marrow of his bones. Meanwhile, she sat in the safety of her cottage on the valley's edge, firelight dancing across her face. Elias slept soundly beside her, curled beneath a quilt she had stitched herself. She watched him with a mother's fierce love and terror, smoothing his hair back as if touch alone could shield him from destiny. "Why now?" she whispered to the flames, voice trembling. "Why did he have to find us now?" Her wolf shifted uneasily. She had known this day would come, but knowing hadn't prepared her for the reality of it, for the way her chest still ached at the thought of the alpha's silver gaze. The next day, his presence was everywhere. She caught glimpses of him in town, speaking to merchants, sniffing out truths like a predator on the hunt. Her heart pounded each time his head lifted, nostrils flaring as though her scent was already tangled in his lungs. And once, she saw him pause at a distance. His eyes lingered on Elias, who was chasing a carved stick through the grass. The boy laughed, wild and free, and for an instant, the alpha's expression shifted. Not cold, not hard, something else, protective, possessive. Her blood ran cold. She hurried Elias inside, barring the door as if wood and metal could keep destiny at bay. But even as she tucked him into bed that night, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep, her wolf whispered back a cruel truth. He knows, not the full truth, not yet, but his instincts had already marked the child. And instincts never stayed silent for long. The knock rattled her door long past midnight, sharp, demanding, the kind of knock that could only belong to him. Her breath caught in her throat as Elias stirred in his sleep beside the hearth. She pressed a trembling hand over his small chest, whispering, "Stay quiet, my love," before rising to face the storm waiting outside. When she opened the door, the night air was cold, but his gaze was colder. The alpha stood framed by moonlight, silver eyes burning with a fury that was not entirely anger. 5 years, he said, his voice low, edged with something dangerous. 5 years, and you thought you could vanish from me. She gripped the doorframe, knuckles white. You made your choice. You rejected me. You lost the right to know where I went. His jaw tightened, his wolf pressing at the surface, and yet you hide a child. Her stomach dropped. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. He stepped closer, the scent of cedar and smoke wrapping around her, suffocating and familiar. Don't lie to me. I saw him. I felt him, his eyes, his strength. He is mine. No. Her voice shook, but her spine held straight. He's mine, mine alone. You don't get to claim him after throwing me away like I was nothing. For a heartbeat, silence stretched, heavy with all the things left unsaid. His fists trembled at his sides, as if holding himself back from shattering the world between them. Finally, he spoke, voice a harsh whisper. You think I would harm my own blood. You think I would let him live unprotected, vulnerable to every rival who would use him against me. Her throat closed. That was the truth she had feared most. Not that he would reject the boy. No, that he would take him. That the alpha's possessive, all-consuming nature would strip her of the only thing she lived for. She shook her head violently, tears brimming. You won't take him from me. I swear I'll run again, and this time you'll never find us. Something flickered across his face then, pain raw and fleeting, before the alpha mask fell back into place. He leaned in, his breath warm at her ear, his words a vow and a threat. Run if you want, but the boy is mine. You are mine. You can't outrun fate. Her pulse thundered, her body trembling as his presence pressed against her walls of defiance. And deep inside, her wolf howled, not in fear, but in recognition. Still, she slammed the door in his face, but as she leaned against it, heart racing, she knew the truth. The alpha would not stop. The forest had gone too quiet. She felt it in her bones as she carried water back from the stream. Elias skipping a few paces ahead with a basket of wildflowers clutched in his hands. Her wolf bristled beneath her skin, ears pricked, nose lifted to scents that didn't belong. They weren't alone. Later at the marketplace, the whispers grew louder. Strangers lingered longer than they should. Rough men with hard eyes watched her boy with an intensity that froze her blood. When she turned, they quickly looked away. But the damage was done. The rumors had spread, not just of a woman with silver-eyed child, of an heir. That night, she sat awake, staring into the dying embers of the fire. Elias slept soundly, his tiny frame curled beneath quilts, blissfully unaware. But she knew the walls around their fragile world were crumbling, and beyond those walls, predators waited. Far across the borderlands, in the shadow of blackened pines, the rival pack gathered. Their alpha leaned forward, sharp smile glinting in the firelight. "So," he drawled, "our enemy's weakness hides in plain sight. A woman, a child, his blood." Hungry laughter rippled through the wolves seated before him. "Bring them to me," he ordered. "Alive, the boy is worth more than gold. He has leverage enough to break the silver," eyed Alpha once and for all. Back in the valley, the Alpha himself was not blind. He had scented the intruders. He had seen the way eyes tracked her, the way strangers whispered. His instincts screamed at him that time was running out, and though she despised him, though she swore she would never let him claim her or the boy, fate forced her hand. He arrived at her door again, this time without warning, without words wasted. "There are others hunting him," he said, his tone sharp as steel. "You may hate me, but you cannot protect him alone." Her lips parted in defiance, but her wolf's ears flicked back. She had smelled it too, the scent of foreign wolves on the wind, growing stronger each day. "I won't let you take him," she hissed, his gaze softened, though his words were edged in command. "I'm not taking him, I'm saving him. Whether you trust me or not doesn't matter. They will come, and when they do, you will need me." A howl split the night air then, distant but closing fast. Her breath caught. Elias stirred in his sleep. The Alpha's silver eyes locked onto hers. "It's already begun." The howl had been a warning, but by dawn warning turned to war. The valley, once a quiet haven, erupted with the sound of snapping branches and pounding paws. Wolves surged from the tree line, eyes glowing with malice, their growls shaking the air. She clutched Elias against her chest, heart hammering. "Stay behind me," she cried, shoving him toward the corner of the cottage. Her wolf clawed at the surface, ready to fight, but fear choked her. Fear not for herself, but for her child. The door exploded inward. A massive wolf lunged, jaws snapping, eyes burning with hunger. Before she could shift, the Alpha was there. He moved like a storm, silver eyes blazing, his wolf bursting free in a blur of black fur and muscle. He met the intruder mid-leap, slamming him into the ground with bone-cracking force. Snarls filled the cottage as the fight spilled out into the open. "Run," he barked, half-shifted, his voice distorted by fangs. She grabbed Elias's hand and fled into the clearing, only to freeze. The rival pack had surrounded them. Shadows circled under the blood. Red moon, their Alpha stepping forward with a cruel smile. "Hand over the boy," he taunted, voice low and poisonous. "Spare yourself needless pain." Her wolf snarled inside her chest, "Over my dead body." The rival Alpha's grin widened. "That can be arranged." He lunged. She barely had time to shift, her body snapping into fur and claws as she met him head on. Pain seared down her side as his claws raked her, but she held firm, teeth sinking into his shoulder. Behind her, Elias screamed. Then the air itself trembled. She whirled. The boy stood in the clearing, silver eyes glowing brighter than the moon, his small chest heaving. The earth seemed to hum beneath his bare feet, a wild, primal power spilling from him that made every wolf pause. The rival pack faltered, growls turning uneasy. No. Their Alpha snarled, disbelief flickering across his face. Impossible. Elias's scream turned into a howl, not a child's cry, but the voice of a wolf born of destiny. The sound shook the trees, sent birds shrieking into the sky. Wolves staggered back, ears flattened, instincts bowing before a power greater than their own. The Alpha, his Alpha, watched, stunned, even as blood dripped down his arm. He saw it now, undeniable and absolute. The boy was his heir, his blood, his future, Elias. She gasped, stumbling toward her son. But even as she reached for him, her heart twisted with dread. The secret was shattered. The truth could never again be hidden. And under the blood-soaked moon, enemies would stop at nothing to claim him. The clearing still trembled with echoes of Elias's howl. The rival pack had scattered, retreating into the forest like shadows chased by flame. But the silence left behind was no comfort. It was heavy, dangerous, brimming with truths that could no longer be hidden. She dropped to her knees, pulling Elias into her arms. His small body shivered, eyes still glowing faintly, breath ragged from power that should not have belonged to a child. "It's all right, my love," she whispered fiercely, rocking him against her chest. "Mama's here. I've got you." Her words trembled because she wasn't sure if she had him at all anymore. The alpha stood a few paces away, blood streaking his face, his chest rising and falling with sharp breaths. He stared at the boy as if the world had just shifted beneath his feet. "Mine," he murmured, voice hoarse. "He's mine." Her head snapped up, fury flashing in her tear-streaked eyes. "Don't you dare, you rejected me. You forfeited this the moment you cast me aside." His jaw clenched, his wolf howling behind his gaze. "I rejected you to protect the pack. I was a fool, I was blind, but I will not deny him, not him." She rose to her feet, placing her body between them, trembling with both rage and fear. "You don't get to claim him now. He's my son, my strength. I bled for him, hid for him, fought alone for him. You don't know what it cost me." He stepped closer, voice breaking, rower than she'd ever heard. "And you think it cost me nothing? Every night my wolf tore at me. Every day I drowned in the emptiness of rejecting what my soul wanted. I was wrong, I was weak, but I am not weak now." Her breath hitched. For a heartbeat, the pain in his eyes mirrored her own. The longing, the regret, the bond that had never truly broken. Behind her, Elias stirred, peeking up at the towering man with wide, silver eyes. The boy tilted his head, innocent and curious. "Mama, who is he?" The question sliced her open. She swallowed hard, tears burning. "He's no one," she whispered, though her voice cracked under the weight of the lie. The alpha's eyes softened, though his words cut through her walls. "No, I am his father, and I will protect him with my life, even if you never forgive me." Her heart wrenched, torn between the vow she had made to protect her son and the pull of a bond she had sworn to bury. And though she turned away, clutching Elias tightly, her wolf betrayed her with a single, aching truth. She still loved him. The moon was full, hanging low and crimson over the valley like a sentinel of war. Every shadow seemed alive, every rustle of leaves a warning. She gripped Elias's hand tightly, feeling the pulse of his small wolf within him, a power raw, fierce, and untested. Around them, the rival pack emerged from the trees, eyes glowing with malice, fangs bared, claws digging into the earth. Their leader stepped forward, a cruel smirk curling his lips. "Tonight, the silver-eyed alpha will kneel, or his heir will die." Her heart hammered. Elias's small hand pressed into hers, trembling, but his silver eyes glowed brighter than the moon, a defiance she had never taught but somehow belonged to him alone. The alpha stepped beside her, tall, unwavering, eyes locked on the enemy. "They'll find nothing but blood," he growled. Time slowed. The world narrowed to the scent of fur and the electric tension in the air, and then chaos erupted. Wolves lunged, claws slicing, fangs snapping. She shifted, her body a blur of motion and instinct, her wolf tearing through those who dared come near. Beside her, the alpha moved with lethal precision, each strike calculated, each growl echoing power that had once terrified her and now filled her with awe. Elias, small but untamed, let loose a howl that shook the ground. Shadows bent, the rival wolves recoiling from the boy's untrained, raw energy. His power surged, his body trembling, but his eyes never wavered from the alpha. "Elias," she shouted, heart in her throat. "Focus, listen to me." The boy's gaze flickered, and instinctively he obeyed. His howl harmonized with the alpha's growl, a symphony of power and bloodline. Rival wolves faltered, stumbling under the combined force of father and son. The rival alpha snarled, lunging at the silver-eyed alpha with desperation and rage. But miscalculation proved fatal. With a single, decisive strike, he was thrown back, teeth snapping uselessly into the night air. Breath ragged, body bruised, she fell to her knees beside Elias, holding him close. The alpha turned to them, silver eyes glinting, and for the first time, no walls remained between them. "You are ours," he said softly, his voice no longer harsh, but claiming, protective. "Yours and his. I will not leave your side again." Tears blurred her vision, but this time they were not of fear. They were of relief, of hard, one victory, and the quiet joy of love finally acknowledged. She rose, still trembling, and pressed against him, letting the bond they had denied for so long finally take root. Elias's small arms wrapped around them both. a living bridge of blood and destiny. Above the blood-red moon watched silently as the valley fell into stillness, the threat vanquished, and the pack, once fractured, stood united under the silver-eyed Alpha. The war was over, but more importantly, a family had been forged, through fire, fear, and unbreakable bonds of love. The valley had returned to its quiet rhythm. Dawn painted the peaks with gold, and the air smelled of pine, earth, and renewal. The battle was over, the rivals vanquished, and for the first time in years, the pack could breathe without fear. She stood at the edge of the clearing, Elias in her arms, sunlight warming their faces. The boy's silver eyes blinked up at her, mischievous as ever, a spark of untamed energy that promised a future she could finally protect. The Alpha approached slowly, hands open, a soft smile tugging at the edges of his usual stern expression. "May I?" he asked, nodding toward Elias, her lips curved, hesitant but trusting. "He's yours," she whispered, her heart pounding. "But remember, he's also mine." His eyes softened, and in them she saw something she hadn't dared hope for in years: reverence, love, and unshakable devotion. "And I would protect both of you with everything I am." Elias wiggled in her arms, laughing, and the Alpha scooped him up effortlessly. The boy's small fists clutched at his father's shoulders, and for a moment the world stood still. The bond they had denied for so long pulsed in the air, a connection of blood, wolf, and heart that no force could sever. She stepped closer, letting the Alpha wrap an arm around her waist, pulling her gently into the warmth she had long avoided. His lips brushed the top of her head, a promise whispered into the quiet morning. "You are ours," he murmured, voice deep and soft. "Mine, ours." Tears slipped down her cheeks, not of fear, not of loss, but of love finally realized. She tilted her face into his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the pulse of the pack, the rhythm of the family they had fought so hard to protect. Elias laughed again, running between them, his small body radiant with the glow of inherited strength. She watched him awestruck, knowing that this boy, her son, was a bridge between them, a living testament to a bond that even years of rejection and secrecy could not destroy. The Alpha knelt to the boy's level, eyes meeting hers as he spoke softly, deliberately. "No more hiding, no more running. We are a family, and nothing, not rivals, not fate, will tear us apart again." She nodded, a weight lifting from her chest. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe it. The wind stirred, rustling the leaves, carrying the scent of wolf and home. And as the first rays of sun touched the valley, the three of them stood together, mate, child, Alpha, a family forged in fire, shadow, and unwavering love. The pack watched silently from the tree line, eyes gleaming with loyalty and respect. The silver-eyed Alpha had reclaimed what was his, not through power alone, but through the bond that had always tied them together. She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "We are home," she whispered, and finally they were.